Hello guys, welcome back to yet another true crime tale with me, Yinka Bikini. This is the place where I tell you lot about crimes on their anniversary, and this week we've got a lot to get through. I'm gonna have to omit quite a few facts to keep within the 10-minute time allotment budget thingamajig. Aileen Wuornos is known as the world's first female serial killer. That is just the accolade that she's given. It was this week that she committed the first of 7 murders that would later find her on death row and executed. Today I want to tell you, of course, about that first crime, which happened 31 years ago this week, but also about her early life and the circumstances that led to Aileen Wuornos being the 10th woman ever to be given the lethal injection in Florida. So welcome to the anniversary. Shwa-na-na-na, 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 shwa-na-na-na. It was a spree that lasted just a year, but it had 7 victims. Aileen Wuornos is potentially one of the most famous serial killers out there, and I think in order to wrap our heads around the crimes that she committed, we definitely have to delve into her early life. She was born at the end of February in 1956 in Rochester in Michigan, and the young Aileen experienced a horrifying childhood. It's not surprising when it comes to serial killers. Her father killed himself when he was serving prison time for child molestation. Her mum had given birth to her and her brother when she was super young. She'd already abandoned the pair at that point, and she left her and her brother, with whom Aileen had, I read, an ancestral relationship, in the care of their grandparents. Her grandma died, and that's when things took the ultimate turn for the worst. Her granddad had been beating and raping her for several years. I've read stories about how she used to trade sexual favors for cigarettes in her local area, and at the age of 15 she dropped out of school to have her grandfather's friend's baby. She gave up her son for adoption, and she sustained herself through sex work and petty theft for a few years. Aileen's childhood, when I read about it, it does break my heart, and of course it doesn't excuse the crimes that she later committed, but it's really sad. She used to engage in sexual acts for food, for alcohol. Her granddad used to beat her and he would force her to strip, and then of course she ended up having her granddad's brethren's baby. Her granddad anyway threw her out of the house, and she began supporting herself and living in the woods near her old home. Her criminal history is super seasoned. She was arrested when she was 18 for driving under the influence, and by the time that she was 20 she was actually married to a 69-year-old guy called Lewis Fell. This didn't last too long, and after a few weeks of petty crime and domestic violence against him, he had enough. He kicked her out. She had to annul their union, and then she returned to Michigan. She was arrested again when she threw a pool ball at a bartender's head. Honestly, her life was tumultuous, to say the least. Aileen's brother died in 1976, and she collected his life insurance policy, which was worth about 10 grand. She blew most of it on a luxury car, which she drove under the influence, and she just spent all of the dough basically. By 1986 she was arrested again when she pulled a gun on a customer in a armed robbery and demanded money, and by 1987, so 2 years before she started her murder spree, she had moved in with hotel maid Tyria, I can't even remember how they pronounce it in the movie, Tyria Moore, and they became romantically involved and also criminally involved as well. I definitely feel like I'm skipping through a lot of her life. Trust me, she really got busy in the 80s, but I've got all of the research in the description box, so have a read, have a watch of the documentaries that I linked to as well, because this woman, her life, some people really life really gets them, and she was just in and out of prison, in and out of being arrested, fines up to her eyeballs for most of her adult life. Now, if you have seen the film Monster with Charlize Theron, you will know one of the stories that Aileen's told for the reason for the crimes that she committed during her time as a serial killer. Throughout her time in custody and just all the interviews that she gave, her story changed depending on who she was talking to. Aileen often claimed to be the victim of rape or attempted rape by the men that she murdered. Now, whilst I don't think there's excuses for killing people in the way in which Aileen did it, some of the scenes in the film Monster and some of the things she speaks about in the interviews that I've seen on Netflix specials and stuff are just so horrific that it kind of makes you step back a bit and think, what would I do if what she's saying is the truth? How much abuse and how much does someone have to go through before they snap? This is not me siding or sympathizing with a serial killer, but as a human being, how much are you expected to take from people to be abused and battered before you react? Maybe I am sympathizing with her, maybe it's because she's a woman, and especially at this time it was unheard of that women were this violent as Aileen turns out to be. But in watching documentaries with her and just listening to her stories, I just think, bruv. Anyway, during her year-long killing spree, Aileen posed as a hitchhiker on prominent Florida highways. She lured men into remote locations and then subsequently turned on them with a .22 caliber pistol. Her victims were Richard Mallory, who was 51. He'd been shot several times, but 2 bullets in his left lung were found to have caused his death. David Spears was 43 and he was a construction worker. His body was found in June of 1990 along Highway 19. Except for a cap that he was wearing, he was nude and he had 6 bullet wounds to his torso. Charles Carskadon, he was 40 and a part-time rodeo worker, was also found in June of 1990. He was also shot multiple times, 9 times, in his lower chest and upper abdomen. Troy Barres was 50 and a car salesman who was found in August of 1990. His body was really decomposed, but evidence showed he'd been shot twice. Charles Humphreys was 56 and he was a retired Air Force major and a former police chief and Florida State child abuse investigator. His body was found on September 2nd. He was fully clothed, he'd been shot 6 times in the head and torso. Walter Geno Antonio was 62. He was found on November 19th, 1990 near a remote logging road in Dixie County. He was nude and he'd been shot 4 times in the back and in the head. And Peter Seams, whose body has never been found. His car was, and witnesses identified Tyria Moore and Aileen Wuornos as the 2 people who were seen leaving the car where it was ultimately found, and a palm print on the interior door handle did match that of Aileen as well. She was eventually picked up on a warrant in Volusia County in Florida, and by this time Tyria had left her and she had gone back to Pennsylvania, but she was apprehended and caught by the police. In the days immediately following Aileen's arrest, Tyria Moore made calls to her in an attempt to elicit a confession that could be used against her. She confessed to the murders, and that's all the police needed in order to arrest Aileen for murder. She spent the whole of 1991 in jail waiting for her trial to begin, and during this time Tyria Moore cooperated with prosecutors in exchange for immunity.
We were sitting on the floor watching TV, and she just come out and said, "I have something to tell you." And I asked her what, and she said that she had shot and killed a man that day.
While Aileen was in jail, she gradually started to believe that her food was being spat in or pissed in, otherwise contaminated. She repeatedly went on hunger strikes, and she claimed that the inmates and staff were plotting against her. She gave so many interviews during her time in prison that I've never seen so much footage of an accused murderer in my life. Netflix used to have a whole segment dedicated to her, and if you just put her name in Google or have a look at some of the links in the description, you will find them. She went on trial for the murder of Richard Mallory in 1992, and that was the only murder that she went on trial for, and she was convicted 2 weeks later. The sentence was death. Around a month later, she pleaded no contest to 3 more of the murders, and in June of 1992, she pleaded guilty to the murder of Charles Carskadon and was given yet another death sentence for the crime, and she had an outburst in the court.
You aren't nothing but a bunch of stump.
Therefore, these proceedings are now
Putting
concluded.
somebody who was raped to death.
She was killed by lethal injection on the 9th of October 2002. She declined the traditional last meal, which could have been anything that she wanted under $20, which is a surprise to me because me and my friends always talk about what your last meal would be, and I assume that it would be like lobster, but if it's under $20, but instead she was given a cup of coffee. And Aileen Wuornos is still known to this day as the first ever female serial killer, which is a little bit hard to believe, but maybe the first one that was caught. That, unfortunately, is all I've got time for this week, and I've only given you a snippet of the life and crimes of Aileen Wuornos. Please use the description bar with all of the links and the research, because her life was absolutely crazy. Thank you as always for watching, for liking, for commenting, for sharing. You guys are amazing, and I will see you next week when my lips won't be as dry. hopefully.